At first, it looked like a dream vacation. 3 young Americans had traveled from the U.S. to Mexico City for Dia de los Muertos, one of the most vibrant and colorful celebrations in the world. They booked an Airbnb in La Rosita, a trendy neighborhood known for its nightlife, art, and culture. They had plans. Explore the city, try the food, live the moment. But just days later, all 3 were not alive. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no warning. What happened inside that Airbnb would leave their families and investigators with chilling questions and a horrifying truth that would come too late. On October 30th, 2022, 28-year-old Kandace Florence and her boyfriend, Jordan Marshall, also 28, arrived in Mexico City. They were joined by their close friend, Courtez Hall, 33. All 3 were from Virginia and had known each other for years. The group was excited to immerse themselves in Dia de los Muertos, a celebration of life and death, honoring ancestors and the spirits of those who've passed. They had rented a sleek Airbnb in the Rosarito neighborhood. It was a modern unit. High ceilings, big windows, and close to restaurants and bars. A perfect spot for young travelers. For the first couple days, everything seemed fine. Kandace was texting her family, posting on Instagram, smiling in selfies. But on the night of October 30th, everything changed. It was late evening on October 30th, 2022. The air in Mexico City was electric. Dia de los Muertos celebrations were already underway. Streets were glowing with marigold petals, flickering candlelight, and the rhythmic beat of traditional drums. Skeleton-painted faces smiled through the crowd. Tourists mingled with locals in plazas, honoring the dead in a city very much alive. Inside the Airbnb, though, something felt different. According to what would later be pieced together from texts and calls, Kandace had begun feeling strange sometime after dinner. The group had gone out earlier, possibly visited a bar or 2, but no one seemed alarmed. They had traveled before. They knew how to handle themselves. But back at the apartment, something shifted. Around 9:30 p.m., Kandace began texting her boyfriend back home. Not Jordan, the man she was traveling with, but a man she had recently been seeing seriously. Their relationship had been close, even if it was complicated. In those texts, she told him she didn't feel well. Then, at 10:06 p.m., her phone rang. He picked up. What he heard would haunt him forever. Kandace's voice wasn't normal. She sounded scared, weak, confused. She told him she was feeling dizzy, like the room was spinning. She said she was having trouble breathing and that her heart was racing. Her voice was slurred. She wasn't forming full sentences. At first, he thought maybe she'd had too much to drink or was having a panic attack. But as the seconds ticked by, it became clear. This wasn't intoxication. This wasn't anxiety. Something was very wrong. He asked to speak to someone else in the room. Could she hand the phone to Jordan? To Courtez? She didn't respond. Then, just like that, the line cut out. The call ended. He tried calling back immediately, again and again. No answer. Panic set in. He knew Kandace. This wasn't normal behavior. And it wasn't like her to just disappear mid-conversation, especially when scared. Something was happening, and he was 2,000 miles away with no way to help. He did what anyone would do. He searched online for the Airbnb listing. He found the host's name and contact number and messaged them frantically, explaining the situation. He then contacted the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City, leaving messages, emails, anything that might prompt a welfare check. But it was nighttime. The offices were closed. He even considered flying down himself. Back at the Airbnb, no one knew what was going on inside. There were no loud noises, no cries for help, no crashing furniture or broken windows. Just silence. A silence that would stretch on for hours. And by morning, that silence would become permanent. The next morning, on October 31st, Mexico City was brimming with life. It was officially Dia de los Muertos and the streets were packed. Paper skulls danced in the breeze, families arranged framed photos and offerings to the unalive. and tourists wandered through cemeteries marveling at the fusion of beauty and death. But inside a modern Airbnb in the upscale Rosarito neighborhood, death was no longer symbolic. It was real. And it was still. After Kandace's boyfriend contacted the Airbnb host, the host agreed to check on the guests. They hadn't heard anything either. No complaints, no checkout messages, nothing. Sometime around midday, the host and building staff made their way to the unit. They knocked. No answer. They tried again. Still nothing. Eventually, a key was used to unlock the door. What they found was a nightmare. All three Americans, Kandace Florence, Jordan Marshall, and Courtez Hall, were not alive. Kandace was reportedly found in the bathroom. Jordan and Courtez were discovered in separate rooms, either on or near their beds. None of them showed any visible injuries. No blood, no signs of violence. No obvious signs of overdose. Just eerily still bodies. They hadn't tried to flee. They hadn't called for help. There were no broken windows or forced entries. Their suitcases were packed neatly. Belongings were undisturbed. It looked like they had simply gone to bed and never woken up. The building security system didn't record any suspicious visitors. No signs of foul play. Everything was as it should be, except for the three lifeless tourists lying inside. Authorities were called immediately. The scene was locked down. Police arrived. Forensic investigators began combing the unit for clues. In the meantime, the U.S. Embassy was finally alerted. And back in the States, 3 families received the kind of call no one is ever ready for. Your child has passed away. Your friend has passed away. They were found in their Airbnb. We're still determining the cause. The shock was incomprehensible. These weren't risk-taking thrill seekers. They were teachers, entrepreneurs, friends who wanted to celebrate life and culture. There was no indication they were in danger. What's worse, they didn't even know they were in danger. For days, speculation swirled online and in media headlines. Were they poisoned? Were they robbed and then staged? Was it gas? Fumes? A botched break-in? Journalists dug through the few facts available. The families demanded answers. Social media users spread wild theories. But inside that unit, the truth was simple and terrifying. There was something in the air that night. Something they couldn't see, couldn't smell, couldn't feel until it was too late. And it killed them quietly, efficiently, and without warning. Weeks later, the autopsy results were released. The cause of death: carbon monoxide poisoning. It was a silent killer. Carbon monoxide is an invisible, odorless gas. It can leak from malfunctioning appliances, water heaters, stoves, heaters, and it replaces the oxygen in your bloodstream. You get sleepy, dizzy, disoriented. Then your heart slows. Then your brain shuts down, and you never wake up. It was believed that the unit's water heater or ventilation system had failed, filling the apartment with toxic gas while they slept. There were no carbon monoxide detectors in the unit. What's truly horrifying is how common this is. Carbon monoxide deaths in short-term rentals, especially outside the U.S., happen way more often than people realize. In 2018, a couple from Louisiana died of CO poisoning in a rented condo in Mexico. In 2021, 3 American tourists were found dead in a sandals resort in the Bahamas, also carbon monoxide. And in this case, the Airbnb listing had no warning about CO risks, no detectors, and no emergency contact information clearly posted. When Kandace's boyfriend tried to get help, he had to dig just to find the host's number. There was no emergency plan, no backup, just silence. And by the time police arrived, the bodies were already cold. Kandace's family described her as a light, creative, kind, full of energy. She had just started her own candle business. She was 28. Jordan Marshall was a high school teacher in New Orleans, loved by his students with plans to travel the world. Courtez Hall was also an educator, someone who believed in uplifting others. All 3 were bright, driven, and passionate. Their deaths were preventable. The families have pushed for answers, demanding that Airbnb and local officials enforce safety measures. like mandatory CO detectors in rental properties. Airbnb issued a statement offering condolences but stopped short of taking responsibility. Mexican officials conducted an investigation but, like many international tourist deaths, it faded from the news cycle. The unit was quietly removed from Airbnb's listings. Tourists rent thousands of Airbnbs every day without issue. But what happened in Mexico City is a chilling reminder of just how vulnerable travelers can be. A malfunctioning appliance, a missing detector, and 3 lives gone, quietly, silently, in the middle of the night. So next time you check into a vacation rental, ask yourself, do you know what's in the walls? Can you smell what's in the air? Because sometimes paradise hides a silent killer. And by the time you realize it, it's already too late. This is Deadly Destinations. Subscribe for more eerie true stories from the places people visit and never return.